Welcome to the thisABILITY Adventures podcast. I'm Andrea Anderson.
And I'm Chip Dodd from Team thisABILITY. So here we are, the race Ramble for Bimbache, Expedition Morocco, ARWS. Tomas followed us on the race. He's going to facilitate this discussion. We are here with, of course, Andrea Anderson and Michelle Fouché and Sarah Goldman from this team. We had an absolute blast. Everybody should put Morocco on their bucket list race because, as you will hear in this podcast, it was absolutely unbelievable. Tomas, where do we even start?
We can start. First of all, I'm going to start from my side, of course. I was pretty much blind when compared to the other races, of course. I had way less inside information from the race. As in other races, we have other people that sends me video or sends me this. So I was able to try to get as much information as possible. So therefore, this is also going to be kind of blind to me also, because there's a lot of things that you're going to tell, all of the stories that happened there that I have no idea about. So this will be exciting. I guess I could start with, first of all, this race was kind of last minute for you guys, right? You decided this, what, like 3 months ago or something like that, right? Let's start with that.
Well, when did we put it on our radar? I think, we did Worlds in Ecuador and we saw the video. There was a promo video for Morocco, and I was like, we've got to do that race. Like, it just seemed like we could not miss it. And, we reached out to Michelle. She'll have to share her reasons for wanting to go to Morocco. And then we had asked Nick Herf to be on the team, and he had to bow out because he started working, for Warrior Races and couldn't do this race. So we were lucky enough to find Sarah Goldman. So I have to start off just by saying, and I've told them this already, that I felt like I had arrived when Sarah and Michelle agreed to be on our team. I mean, I've known them before they knew me. Michelle, is a race director, and we've done a lot of her races, and her races were some of my first races. And then Sarah, I remember hearing her on the TA1 podcast and thinking, oh, that she sounds amazing. And she had some advice on that podcast that I took to heart, and I might as well spill those beans now. But her idea of having someone write you a letter that you can have maybe in one of your down points of the race to help you carry on. I did that for a lot of races, and it was because I listened. They should share more about themselves, but I was super stoked that they were on the team. And yeah, so Sarah, why don't you tell everybody your race history?
Well, race history, I mean, it's interesting thinking like this was pretty short turnaround. I know we were talking about it during the race, trying to remember how long it was from when you all reached out to the race. Was it 8 weeks, 10 weeks? I mean, it was not many.
Oh, I thought it was more like 4 or 6 weeks.
It was
short notice in my book.
It was pretty short. And for me, it was like there was just no reason to say no, right? Which is a pretty fortunate position to be in. I was going through a work transition. It was going to be good timing. Morocco has been at the very top of my bucket list in terms of travel for a long time. Hit my 7th continent, hitting Africa. So it was really, that was awesome. And you two, Chip and Andrea, to be around you all racing. We've never raced together, but obviously you've been spent a lot of time sort of in races together, and so I knew it'd be a good fit. And Michelle, it's funny, Andrew, you say the same thing. I say the same thing about Michelle. It's like Michelle was the race director of my very first race, 12, 13 years ago. So it felt really important and really cool to be racing with Michelle too. For me, this felt like sort of a return to international expedition racing, into like longer format expedition racing. I'd taken a couple of years off from racing sort of altogether, sort of post-COVID while I was in grad school. Been racing shorter races the last couple of years, but this was the first big expedition back, and man, what a way to come back.
Yeah, Michelle, I know you've been on the podcast before, but share again your background.
Oh man, yeah. Well, I've been racing for about 20 years. I watched the Eco Challenge back in 2000 and the original one and was like, oh my God, this is super cool. I want to do this one day. And was living in DC and Googled adventure racing and this race organization called EX2 Adventures popped up. And back then they did a lot of adventure racing stuff, and that's how I got into it. I met a guy by the name of Andy Bacon, and we started racing together. And then Odyssey or Adventure Racing was around back then. It was a lot of the races we did. We started putting on events through Adventure Addicts Racing up in DC, and just kind of kept it going, and just have been racing ever since. Um, and yeah, and I took me many years to do my first expedition. I did my first big race in 2008. It was Primal Quest. It was a 10-day race. Um, and then I had a bit of a lull between a lot of big expedition races because there weren't really many of them back then in the early 2000 or 2010, 2015. And then just in the last probably 8 or 10 years, I've started racing a lot more bigger races. They're my favorite. I love the travel component, the cultural component, um, the distance, the length. Um, yeah, they're just super, super fun. So, and Morocco,
And why
Morocco for
Morocco?
me, it was definitely a bucket list. I spent my childhood in other parts of Africa growing up. My parents had spent some time in Morocco before I was born. And I just remember hearing stories from them about the country, particularly Marrakesh. And it's just always been a place I've wanted to go and wanted to visit. So yeah, it was a pretty easy yes when I was asked.
So you may have been made in Morocco, born in America.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yep. So, yeah, so that's kind of how, yeah, I like I said, I couldn't say no. So,
So one other fun thing, when Andrea and I first got into expedition racing, we did Belize, and that was our first really big race together. And then shortly thereafter, Michelle, you asked me to like do Expedition Oregon, and
yeah.
and it was like just like Andrea was saying, I was like, oh my God, like these are like Michelle and Paul and um uh Jeremy, like holy crap, these are like pro racers. Like I had totally fanboy, like, oh my God, and you like really broke us in because I did Oregon with you guys, but then Andrea had FOMO and ended up doing Oregon with a different team. But either way, that you really were our gateway into the really hard big races.
So
Just so,
what you're saying is I'm really responsible for all of this.
yeah,
That's
you
what
are
I'm hearing.
responsible.
Just
Yeah.
kidding.
That's what I'm definitely hearing.
I want to add something for those for the listeners who don't know. Michelle has the Buff Betty. She race directs that, and she also race directed the nationals last year. Just a little extra
Yeah.
in the middle of a hurricane, pretty much. She
Yeah,
race
yeah.
directed that nationals last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Total celebrity.
A little side note there. Okay, so um, of course, you guys pack everything. This is almost last minute, or at least it was last minute for Sarah. And then you guys are there in Morocco, and before the race starts, of course, you did your own exploring. So tell me, Chip, about the days before the race, because I know you also went there and went to the mountains and did your thing before the race. Tell us a little bit about that before the race.
Yeah,
Oh,
I guess
and any complications you have had as well.
there were many complications.
Of course, there
That can be
always
the
are.
whole podcast on just getting to the start line. So let me start out with a couple of the complications. We started out wanting to go on Turkish airline, and Turkish like can't take bike boxes apparently. So we had to bail on Turkish, and then we had to figure out a way like to get like Sarah was going to take Turkish, but then they couldn't take the bike boxes with her either. And then so Sarah lives like 6 hours away from us. And so we literally had to, like, she drove 2.5 hours, I drove 2.5 hours to Danville, and I gave her a 50-pound bag and she gave me her bike box. And so Andrea and I had 3 bike boxes flying out. We had to skip Turkish airline and go with Delta, which then they punted us to Air France. And
But
then,
also, this was like 10 days before the race.
oh yeah, yeah.
It's
This
like,
wasn't like months out.
it was the day before you all flew, was the day that I went and met you with my bike, and we were like figuring it all out like immediately. And your bag's still right behind me here. We still haven't made the switch back. I still have my bike.
Right. Yeah. So the complications were thick, like just because of all the bike shenanigans. But either way, we all ended up in Marrakesh. But like you said, Andrew and I like to get there a little bit early, and Michelle luckily was able to get there a little bit early with us.
And
Anytime,
if I had maybe more notice, I might have been able to get there earlier. I'm just saying.
yeah. And I think you wish you got there early because it seemed like you loved Marrakesh and Morocco.
Yeah.
Either way, any adventure racer listening to this, like when you do one of these big races in another country, the race is one thing, but get there a little bit ahead of time or leave a little bit after, and it's really important. I don't know. I think the big benefit to doing these races is that you get to experience the culture, you get to experience whatever, whether you get a guide or whatever, and you go on these big expeditions. It really is kind of life-changing. And so we luckily were able to get there like a couple weeks in advance. And Andrea and I we went into Imlil, which is a little town like south of Marrakesh, and we found a great guide, Abdullah Baba, and he took us all up into the mountains, and we had a really, really cool experience. And then we came all the way back to Marrakesh and we got Michelle, and then we went into the souks, the markets, and really just had a great time for 2 or 3 days with her. And then the race starts, like, because like Sarah got in there kind of at the last minute. But either way, I'm so glad that we got a chance to go there ahead of time, because Morocco is just an absolutely amazing country. It's so different than the United States. It's so different from everywhere in Europe. I really can't compare it to anything other than maybe Lesotho when we did Africa. But I don't know. You guys, what do you guys think about Morocco?
Well, we should also mention that we recorded a podcast with Abdullah. So that'll be coming out too. So if you want to hear more in depth about the time outside of the race, you can listen to that. But yeah, it was all of our cultural experiences were fascinating. I mean, we had plenty during the race too. So yeah, it's amazing.
I was blown away by just the sheer beauty of the country. I mean, we were out in the mountains and sort of off the beaten path, but just spectacularly beautiful. Big contrast between the desert and the mountains. Everyone thinks of Morocco and they think of the desert, right? You think of the Sahara. A lot of people don't even realize that you have this major mountain range that runs across the country, the Atlas Mountains, which are very, very high, very similar to like the American Rockies, I would say. And so that was really interesting to see. And I just knew everything that had been told about Morocco, very magical, very exotic. I mean, it's where they film all these movies, for Christ's sakes, right? So
Game of Thrones.
It's going to be a special place. And it did not disappoint at all, in terms of the culture, the scenery, the people, everything about it.
Yeah, so Sarah's the one that brought humor to the race oftentimes. And I don't know if it was me or her, but we kept saying things like it was just so Moroccan. Like all of Morocco was
just keeps Moroccan. Yeah.
It's just
Morocco
all over.
Keeps Moroccan it. Yeah, for sure. For me with Morocco, I think, some folks know that I lived in the United Arab Emirates for a little while in the UAE, and Morocco really to me felt like a combination of the Emirates and Nepal. sort of mixed together, like that big tribal mountain culture, but also, you know, an Islamic Muslim country with sort of everything that comes along with that. And so it was just really, for me, like the first couple of days in Marrakesh just felt like really nostalgic for my time in the UAE. And then when we finally got out on course and we're up in the mountains in the Atlas, it really had that vibe, kind of that Nepal high mountain country vibe.
So let's go right now to the start of the race, because my understanding is I got this image in my background of the start of the race, the location. Uh, Apparently, it looks awesome. I mean, I'm not there, I cannot see it, but you guys went through the whole thing. So let's see, Andrea, start talking to us about your what is it called, the Arabian adventure that you were saying in that picture that you were inside that little city.
Yeah,
Tell us
well,
about the race, and the start of the race in this little city, whatever that thing is called.
we had all sorts of names for this place. But I think what it's called, and maybe I'm not pronouncing it right, was Eight Benedou. Eight Benedou. Anyway, and I'm going to pass it off from there because Michelle and Sarah really probably loved this even more than I did. I thought it was amazing. We were all over that mountainside, but yeah, it was filmed where they're actually familiar with the shows.
Well, first we have to talk about the bus ride.
Yeah. The warm bus ride.
Oh my God,
How naked did you get?
We're all roasting in the back of that bus, getting dehydrated to begin the race, but
we did have that cool little coffee stop on the side of the road at that tourist spot with
we did. We sure did.
Overlooking all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But we knew the first leg was going to have a lot of kind of pop culture references to it, based on the clue sheets that were like given out ahead of time. So I actually, knowing that Gladiator had been filmed there, I actually watched Gladiator on the plane on the way over, like the old Gladiator, the first one, because it's definitely filmed right there in, I'm going to go with Ait Ben Haddad. I don't know. It's much better than what we were calling it. And, you know, so it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I mean, it's a really unique place, and it was really interesting to have it as part of the race. Just knowing that, can I talk about the fact that like we had some checkpoints that were up in sort of the old ancient city piece of that, and we had to go through essentially like a gate, and we had to spend 30 minutes inside that section. The race was adamant about no running in that area, and it's obvious when we were in there, like why. Obviously, they didn't want us running. The race referee was in there. There was kind of race officials everywhere, and kind of had that 30-minute hold. So they really were discouraging us from running, and even at our very casual pace, we probably were done with those checkpoints in 20 minutes, 25 minutes tops.
Yep.
So it was a really unique way to start.
Yeah, and as we left that area, Michelle and Sarah were singing the theme song to Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Pretty cool.
Which we then did for days.
Checkpoints were inside the city, and you had to go inside through all and there's people living there, right?
No, I don't think anyone actually lives in it.
Okay.
Because it's a really protected space. It's a, you know, you have to pay an entrance fee to get in. There's shops and galleries and all sorts of things in the labyrinth of it, but I don't actually think anyone resides in the original historic part of it anymore.
But there were checkpoints inside there, right? One of the first ones, right?
Yep.
And the navigation inside is like whatever. I mean, you had a good map, or just whatever, and you have to go in through the labyrinth until you find the checkpoints. How does that work?
So the map had an insert that showed basically a path that you should go on, but essentially was every single road in that complex. So it wasn't actually that helpful, and it didn't show where the points were. There were just 4 points in that wall, and you, as long as you went on the path that it said for you to go on, you would find the people that were there. The checkpoints were actually people. So you had to find the volunteer that had the punch, and they would punch your card. So it's kind of random, but it did make sure that you went through every single part of that, including the very top of the hill that you can see there. Yeah, and it's quite steep. I mean, there's steep stairs, and it's hot, and even though we were walking, we were going with purpose, and there were a few points outside of that area that we had already gotten. So all around that area were points 1 through 7. So pretty much you get back to where the start was point 7, and then we moved on through the bigger portion of the trek where the points started to be farther apart and more farther apart, and yeah, got into
It
the
was also like a cannon and a little castle also, right? As part of those points.
yeah,
Or like a trebuchet, a cannon or a trebuchet, something.
a trebuchet, which I had never heard
Trebuchet.
that word before.
Yeah, that was like very towards the end of that trek.
Was that Sarah and Chip knew that word?
Yeah.
I've never heard
Yeah, it's
that word
like, I
before.
guess
Oh, you didn't know that word trebuchet?
Never heard of it.
Oh, okay.
all through this section, we were going through movie sets, and eventually we ended up with this like catapult trebuchet device. And looking back, I think it's actually a catapult, not a trebuchet. But either way, yeah, it was really, really cool seeing it. We were there at night because we were moving a little bit slower. But and then we come up to this castle, kind of like what's behind me, but it's foam. Like it's like Busch Gardens. You know, you get there and it looks amazing, and then you kind of get behind it and you touch it, and it's like, wow, this is actually foam. This is all fake. And that was actually really, really cool. Like we could tell that we were on a movie set, even though we just traveled like 20K across what looked like Mars, with no water, and it was really, really hard navigation. But either way, this movie set was many, many, many kilometers wide. Super cool.
Well, too, like, we left point 7 and then, went along the desert. But between points 9 and 10, for example, it was 13K between points. And there were no trails. We were just bushwhacking across the desert on a bearing. There were a couple collecting features like roads that, you couldn't necessarily trust because there would be more in real life than are on the map. But that's when we saw like a solar panel and we thought, oh, we're getting close to being out of water. Let's go over there. And then when we get there, it was really, really cool. We found some men that were there working on the farm, and they filled up all of our water bottles, and they pulled out a watermelon for us and cut it up, and we had a really great watermelon. I mean, who would have thought that there would be any farming in that area? I mean, it's total desert. Like there's hardly anything growing. And then we come up to this solar panel that has a watermelon farm. It just seems so random. And they were so friendly. And yeah, that was really, really our first, real cultural experience with just local people who were, being nice. They didn't speak any English and we didn't speak any of what they were speaking. So that was super cool.
We see the Arabic or French or both, or
Say
some
that
local
again?
dialect.
Berber, yeah, some
Yeah.
Berber dialect. Well, and that's where we were like sort of under that we called the Eye of Sauron, right? Where it was like that big, tall, like I don't even know, it was part of a giant solar farm. But when the videos and stuff come out, eventually I mean, just imagine staring across a very flat, barren rock landscape with one giant column shining in the distance. I mean, it was like impossible not to just walk towards it.
Yeah, it almost seemed alien. That it was like a lighthouse in the middle of a desert. That was the brightest lighthouse you can imagine in the daylight. It's reflecting back at us. It must have been some sort of mirror or something, but that was
It was
really
going to
cool.
shoot lasers at us or something.
Yeah.
But
So,
also one thing about this whole experience, I mean, when it comes down to ARWS races, it's super hard to get on the podium. And I really appreciated that our team, we kind of went into this looking at it as an experience race. So the idea is that if we can stop by and get some water from these folks, and they pull out watermelon and invite us into their little, they speak Arabic. Like they don't know any English, we don't know any Arabic, and we can't pull out our cell phone to communicate with them. But we were able to take the time to stop and like experience their culture, and this was really the first big cultural experience. And I even tried to pay them. And our guide Abdullah like warned us, like if you're really out in the back country, if people invite you in and give you water and give you food or whatever, like if you pay them, like they're almost offended if you try to pay them. But you don't like I'm so used to the United States, like everybody wants a tip, everybody wants to get paid. And so even after this guy gave us all this stuff and these water and the watermelon and all this stuff, like I tried to give him a little bit of money and he was like, no, 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 no. And like we're good. It kind of set the pace for the race. Like, wow, like we're really here to experience Morocco. The race for me was like secondary. It's like experiencing this country and these people. Like for me, it was like this is a priority during this race.
Leg, changing a little bit of a subject here with regards to the leg. That leg was a long trek, and I would assume that at least some of you have to have some heat issues, right? Is it very hot during that leg?
It was, yeah, I definitely felt the heat, felt a little dehydrated. I actually was thinking about it, and I think some of it might have started on the bus with the heat on the bus. Just like I lost a lot of sweat on that bus. So I think I went in and started the race a little dehydrated. But we slowed down a bit to help me out getting across the desert, and then by the time the night came, it cooled down a bit. I felt a lot better. And we continued on. So, but yeah, it was definitely hot, super warm, not a lot of water, a lot of exposure, no shade anywhere. Kind of typical of what you would expect in the desert.
Yeah, and then night fell and we kind of fell apart. Yeah. Points 13 and 14 were the last points on that leg. And they were in this like grid of farmland that, wasn't exactly parallel lines. And it was just like a mess. And the map didn't represent reality very well. And we were kind of zigzagging along these paths and yeah, it just got to be really concerning. We're like, how can this be so hard in this first leg? And it looks like we should be going right to these points, but there was just so much more in real life than what was on the map. And then we got to a certain point where we even like um, made our way out to one of the main roads that we're not supposed to be on. So we didn't travel along it, but we kind of went up there to see exactly where we were. And at that point, we turned back around and ran into, oh, what team was it? You guys remember?
The Germans.
It was the Germans, wasn't it?
Okay. I don't remember the German team.
Oh yeah, the
You
Germans.
do. Oh yeah, the newbie team. Okay, so here we are, the seasoned pros that we are a bit off track. And the newbies, the Germans say, oh, the point's right back there. And so they gave us the confidence to go back and attack that again. And sure enough, like if we had just stayed on the more traveled path and figured out the jigs and jogs, that would have suited us better than actually trying to follow the map. Because we were trying to follow the map and trying to turn at the right turns. But if we had just looked around and said, we just need to go on the most traveled path to where we need to go, I think we would have found it. Anyway, we backtracked to it and got it, and then got turned around at our next point too, which was really disappointing. And I thought, oh my goodness, Michelle and Sarah probably have no faith in us now. And we're a lot later to the TA than we want to be. And, we were all still like keeping our spirits up just fine. It's the first leg, like there's plenty of time to redeem yourself. But to me, I was like, oh man, this is not looking good. Like, I still haven't looked back at the track, but I imagine our tracks for 13 and 14 were horrendous. And it probably cost us at least 2 extra hours.
I was just thinking, like, as we're describing this, how much happened in that first leg?
Yeah.
Right? Like, as we're talking about all these things, I'm like, well, that was all the same leg. Like, it feels like that should have been a couple different legs, but nope, that was all at the same time, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, it was a
Like
big, long leg.
Yeah, it was a big long trekking leg. And what was it? Like 20 something hours is what it took you guys? I forgot.
I don't remember now either.
Yeah, we were in the TA while it was still dark, right? And the
No,
race,
I think it was 15 hours.
yeah, I was gonna say
Okay.
the race started at 2 or something, right? And we were in the TA before the next morning,
Yeah.
barely. I just
Yeah.
remember standing there with you, Michelle, and you're like, no, there's the mosque. And I'm like, no, that's that mosque. And it's like, but this mosque over there. And it was like they all, and you know, they were lit up and like were beautiful, but they all looked very, very similar to each other. And so you very quickly realize that they cannot be a reference point because they're so similar looking.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot that. They look exactly the same. They were lit up with the same
The red and green.
yellow, red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there were definitely two of them. And Sarah made sure we noticed that there were two different ones, not the same one that we kept seeing. Oh, it takes a whole team to figure it all out.
Were you able to take a nap there once you get to the TA?
Yeah.
It's like 45 minutes. Let the
Okay.
sun come up. We got
Yep.
into TA. We were all a little bit shattered at that point, you know, just sort of like it'd been longer than we'd expected. I think we probably were out of food, out of water, you know, the usual. And it was, you know, that point right before it gets light. And it was like either we're going to build bikes and get out of here, or we're going to just crash for, you know, 30, 45 minutes, let the sun come up and build bikes in the daylight. And I think that proved to be a really smart move to take that 45-minute cat nap there, because it felt great to open eyes with the sun up.
And Michelle had a fire, I think. She said she cuddled up to a fire during that.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. He lit it for me.
Yeah.
And then he just kept stoking it and keeping it going while I was sleeping. Yeah, it was nice. Yeah.
Because we didn't get good sleep prior to the race. I think that's something that people think of like an expedition, like, oh, you shouldn't sleep on the first night. But if you come into the race, like how long did you get to sleep prior to the race? And then that should dictate when you take your first sleep. And so I think we were coming to this race with like 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and we woke up at like 5:30 a.m. And so I think this is a good time to sleep, and I'm really glad that you got some fire and some warmth, and we needed it.
But especially because when we left that leg, it was really challenging getting out of that TA and across the river. We definitely needed the daylight because we had a hard time even with the daylight.
Yeah, I mean, we would ended up starting a leg that was just epic for mountain biking. I mean, definitely probably the biggest mountain bike leg I've ever done in a race. I think it ended up being 150 kilometers.
Off trail.
160 kilometers, just the hour. I think it took us 30 hours, 24 hours.
Yeah. Off trail. Like this is bushwhacking, desert whacking, whatever you call it. This is not single track or double track. This is like backcountry Morocco for 12 hours.
Well, and we started in the desert and we finished it up at 7,000 feet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I might have like blacked out a lot of that leg. Like I don't remember the beginning of it very well. Because I remember riding away from the TA, and then I think I remember like the big climbs. But we ended up on our bikes for a lot of this race.
So yeah. Which bike leg was it? The first, second, third, or fourth that were all like not split up by anything?
I'm like, I feel like they're all conflating maybe at this moment.
Well,
one big bike like all the way to the end. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, right. Well, though this bike leg, the way I remember it was when we left, we were trying to leave and cross the river, and we did at a pretty easy spot. But then we got in this area that was just brush, and we needed to either force our way north without a trail, total bushwhacking, I think for 2 kilometers. And we're like, we just can't keep doing this. And we couldn't find a cut through. Like we thought we were going to find a trail. We couldn't find the trail. And we probably spent an hour trying to figure that out, and then finally gave up and decided to go back and then go down and around where we had been lost the night before. We had to go back around that way to cross the bridge to get over to where we, knew where we were and got through. So we went clear around, which I mean, a lot of teams did that. It was a strategy. And the reservoir, they gave us a supplemental map that showed that the water levels were much higher than they had been in the past, and that most of the trails that we would consider taking would be underwater. So we were kind of wondering, like, why'd they give us this map? Like, that's kind of weird. Maybe they just want us to know, or we were wondering, did they give us this map because they do want us to go that way? So it's kind of like, I didn't really know why we got that information, but knowing that we went around, and it seemed like the better thing to do, because like another team, the Canadian team, tried to go through the water, and they got to a point where they were holding their bikes above their head. And Julie on that team is probably about my height, and she said, the water got up to her chin, and she's holding her bike above her head, and had an electronic shifter. Anyway, that's another story. But they had to turn back, and they spent a lot of time trying to go on the trail through the water, and it didn't work. So even though it took us a long time to get back around, we did. And then we just kind of skirted around that reservoir on the high side. So, there was no trail or anything. And we were just riding on the moon. I mean, it was cool. I thought it was a really neat experience because there was no trail and our bikes were really holding up. We didn't have any mechanicals, and it's kind of shocking, actually.
Yeah. I feel like this is a good point to mention. One of the like unique things about international racing is, we got that supplemental map at the TA from volunteers that didn't speak English or had very limited English. And so some of the nuance that you're like, why did they give us this map? Did they want us? Is this the like hint, hint, nudge, nudge, go this way, don't go this way? And like some of that gets lost in when you're not able to communicate, clearly verbally. And so that's a unique thing about being, obviously not racing in your own country and racing with a race company that's, Spanish speaking predominantly. And I was like, man, I wish we really knew what they were trying to tell us, because maybe we would have known had we spoke the same language,
Yeah. I don't know.
Some Spanish.
That
Yeah,
was
you should have
Spanish.
some Spanish in Morocco.
That was Spanish, but that was I do remember that ride very well, obviously, as we were trying to stay out of the reservoir. We did almost lose a pedal during all of that, but
oh no, I want to add something with regards to the reservoir that we forgot to mention. 1 or 2 days before the race, there was a lot of rain, and basically they had to redo the whole checkpoints. They had to relocate checkpoints, and like the reservoir, as you were saying, was higher. So the race director had to make a lot of last minute changes, and that's why that reservoir was flooded. We forgot to talk about that. Last minute, every adventure race, or not everybody, but not every race, but almost every race have some kind of last minute thing that they have to go ahead and change something because some weather related issue, right? It's almost like almost every race that you go through, there's something there that last minute have to change. Anyway, I just wanted to add that note with regards to the reservoir.
Yeah, that was one of many things that changed. And we got to the next TA. And maybe it's jumping the gun, but just having so much snow and everything, they had changed the next leg too. That leg 3 was going to go up to a summit, and they changed it to only going up to a saddle. And then the next leg after that, that was going to be a trek, and then they were going to transport our bikes for us, but that road was no longer available. I guess there was a landslide, so we had to carry our own bikes instead of what they had originally planned. But we'll get there. But yeah, a lot.
So we had Lake 1 was about 40. So we talk about Lake 1 which was about 45, you might 50 kilometers. Then you had the 115-kilometer Lake 2, which is the one we're talking about. I'm sorry, 100. Yep. And then you go to the TA2, and then that's where you go to the section. And should we talk here? The transition area 2/3, there's 2 transition areas there. They're supposed to do a canyoneering loop there. But here, should we talk about like the scoring system and what happened that at this TA, it's when you had what Chip called the gangster move. So you arrive here at TA, and then tell us about the gangster move, Chip, and the scoring system.
Sure. So we're like on the bike leg leading into this TA, and we're talking about the scoring system, and we're actually arguing about it. And I ended up being completely wrong. And
Oh,
Sarah and Michelle were right. And so um but yeah, the idea is that so when you skip a point, your score stops, and you're now related against that same any team that has that same checkpoint. Now you're against time, right? So we were coming up on, I think we were completing CP20 going into the TA, and the race director like stopped. Like they were in a car and they were driving along beside us, and they stopped and chatted, and we chatted with them, and we were like trying to clarify it because I was gonna bet a whole lot of money, and Sarah would have won, and I would have owed her a lot of money. But either way, the idea is that we asked the race director, like basically, if team A, just any team, gets CP1 and then gets no other CPs, but makes it to the finish. And then team B skips CP1 and gets all the other checkpoints and gets to the finish. Which one wins? And he very quickly said, team A. So we realized, wow, like actually the last CP that you get in sequential order is actually when your time stops and your score stops, and then you're only related against any teams that have that same CP or below. And so what we realized, even though we're slow and we're kind of in the back of the pack, if we can just get into that TA, go out and get CP21, which was an out and back, and then come back to the TA and sleep, and then go on the next trek, then we would be able to be ranked above all other teams that got to that TA and then just moved on and didn't go out and get the out and back. And so I think it actually moved us up like 5 places or something like that. There are 4 places in the rankings. So that's why I say it was a gangster move. I mean, we were like we're back mid pack. So this is the gangster moves that back mid pack play to get their rankings up. But either way, I thought like we're slow, but on the other hand, we can still use our brains, and we can put out an extra 4 hours to jump these extra 4 or 5 slots. And it gives us a little bit of competition. And then after that, the entire rest of the race was all about the culture and the people. And we didn't have to worry about our rankings because the rankings just stopped. And
so I don't think that's like entirely true though, right? Like I think that's where we maybe stopped using our brains a little bit, in the sense that like once we hit CP21, we then are lumped into that group of people who are CP21 people, right? Like if you got to CP21, then we're competing against those people from CP21. The next tiebreaker is the total number of points at total, right? So like if we had options to get points and skipped them, we could have been, I think there were a couple other teams that had CP21 that we technically were against. So it was like total number of points then would have satisfied, would have sorted out the rankings. And then if we had the same number of total points, it was then time. And so it's like those 3 things in order. So it's like when we say like it stops, I don't know that like that's totally the most accurate way of describing it, because it's still, it just like shrinks who you're competing against, right? To the group of people who also got to 21, right? Which we at that point didn't know how many or if there were any, right?
There was only one that got it, but there's no way for you to know anyway. So you're racing, you don't know how many. Right. So there's only one team that did that, and of course they arrived earlier than you. After whatever checkpoints you got after that didn't matter. And there were about 4 teams that did not do the CP21, and then they basically went ahead and continue. There was one team that didn't even get CP20. Or 19, one of them, and then they went ahead and did the entire loop. But because they jumped one before, then their rank even lower, even though they did the entire trekking loop and back. So those are kind of things that this is just, that's the game. Whatever the rules are for the game, you have to strategize to whatever that particular race rules are, because the race rules change from race to race. It's something that, it's interesting to see.
Yeah.
So I feel like,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to say that I feel like this is a big win for Team thisABILITY, because in New Zealand, we didn't quite think it all through. And this time we did. And we verified with the volunteers numerous times to make sure we understood. And, we were feeling for the first time at just what speed we were actually going at. Like all of our estimates were way longer than we thought they'd be. And this was the first time we'd be skipping something. And unfortunately, it was like something that would be cool to do. So it kind of like hurt not to. So like when we figured this little trick out, or it kind of rejuvenated us a little bit. I would say it rejuvenated Chip a lot. And he could not stop talking about it to anyone who would listen. This gangster move that, we all agreed to let him do, or that's his words, where we were like, that's what we want to do too. We didn't just let you do it. Anyway.
That was a 4-hour out and back that you guys had to tolerate. But then after that, I was like, then after this, I don't care what points you do or don't do. I got my checkpoint 21, the score stopped, I'm good. The competitive side, I was like, okay, I'm done. That was just me though.
Well, it did totally pay off. So I am really glad that we did it, and I'm glad that we all took the effort and energy to understand and make sure we were doing it right. I only mentioned the stuff about like continuing to get checkpoints because I did have folks have questioned me, since the race, have been like, well, what's the incentive to do anything in the race after you skip a checkpoint? And I'm like, well, it's because, especially something like going into that big trek, a lot of teams also skip that trek, right? So it's like, if you all drop out at the same, or if you all start skipping points at the same time, there is competition among those groups of people. So there is incentive to still be getting checkpoints and moving at some sort of pace. It's not just like totally coast to the finish.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, we all knew we still needed to try to keep a pretty good pace just to make it to the finish line and to the next cutoff and to the next cutoff. Is like our it wasn't all relaxation after that, is what I'm trying to say. Like we still had to hustle, and we did our best. We didn't do anything less necessarily. Like maybe if we still kept our point going longer, we would have had a little more motivation to go a little bit faster. But I don't know. I don't know if it would have been in our ability. So
Once that happened, then you went ahead to the next checkpoint, to the next transition area to do another regain. But then you go to the transition area, and I noticed that now the route choices are different. Me as a third watching, I'm looking at, wait, they're skipping points now, but this point that they're skipping, well, now that we know the strategy and the gangster move, now skipping those points makes sense, because then on the leg, right after you do your regain, you're out and back chippy 21, now you're on the bike. There was in the map, for example, tell us about that checkpoint. There was a checkpoint that you guys skipped because now you don't care about the extra checkpoint. There was one going you go ahead, you go around the mountain in a flat, nice area, right, Chip? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I think I'm sorry, the internet was messing up there for a second.
Oh,
So yeah, I think going into the TA that had the Rogaine, we skipped the checkpoint that went to the caving.
Yeah.
I'm really glad we did, because that required going into waist deep water, and a lot of teams had problems with that. And again, our score stopped, so it's kind of like, I mean, we could have gotten a little bit of checkpoint to rate ourselves with the same CP21 people, but either way, we were Bush, and we're ready to get to the TA. The TA.
Yeah, but we got to talk about this leg. We have got to talk about leg 4 and this bike adventure that we had, because I would say that it was probably one of the harder points of the race, in terms of this was the out of TA3 and putting our bike. I think we all had a really pretty crappy sleep at TA3. Super cold, super windy, super loud. That was definitely the low point of the race for me, was that sleep or that attempt at sleeping. But then that was the night that we put our bikes on our back and walked uphill and kept walking uphill and kept walking uphill and kept walking uphill, and really thought that we had gotten to the crux when we arrived at the saddle, and we're so happy, and popped over the edge and sat down for a minute and walked downhill a little bit, and then we entered the canyon. That never ended. We were so happy to have our bikes with us. It was like just so wonderful to have those bikes with us, accompanying us on that journey.
If you cannot hear the sarcasm,
Yeah,
I'm here to tell you, it was miserable.
Miserable.
The longest bike carry in history of ARWS, probably. Yeah, I mean, we carried our bikes up and up and up, and that trail was a little bit hard to acquire too. So we were side hilling a little bit, and sometimes the wind would blow, and when your bike's on your back, it's like, oh no, like what's gonna happen? And yeah, that canyon was wet, and we had to be crossing the water. Couldn't even count how many times, and we all had different methods we probably all tried different things each time, picking our bikes up or just letting it clunk along. I think even Chip rode some of the rocky sections, and it felt like it would never end. I think that canyon, didn't it take us like 6 or 8 hours?
10 hours.
10 hours.
Well, 10 hours from the TA to the hostel hotel checkpoint.
It was only 10 hours.
It was 10 hours.
It was like way more than 10 hours.
2 a.m. to noon we got there.
Man, I just kept saying, we live here now. This is just our life now. Our life now, just walking around another corner to see another corner, to see another corner, to see another corner, to see another corner.
And that was another really big nav challenge, because like we got up to the saddle basically, and the wind was super high. And it was unclear on which way to go. And I kept like looking at the map, and I was like, oh, I can't have the whole team descend if I'm not positive, because it would just be detrimental to the team. And so we actually agreed to like wait it out. Like let's just sleep for 20 minutes, wait for the sun to come up, and then look at it. And so I really appreciated that everybody on the team's a navigator. And like when you as the navigator are responsible for the team, and especially on something like that, that's like you're descending, or you're at the apex of a trek, bike section, pack raft, whatever, it's like crazy section. I really appreciated everybody, like, let's look at the maps, like let's work together on this. And we all agreed to wait for the light to come up, because then we knew we're on the right track. And so I don't know. For me, that was when I really appreciate everybody's help, because I was above my pay grade and nav.
No, it was a good idea just to wait and see, because we could actually see below us. We could see all the other trails. If we had gone down a different trail, that would have been like catastrophic.
Yeah. God.
I don't know what would have happened. We would have lost like 12 hours.
Yeah.
It would have been
At least,
horrendous. Yeah. So I think it was definitely the right call. And we got to watch the sunrise.
Yeah.
On that mountain, on that saddle, which is kind of cool. So
and I will say, like, the acquisition of that trail to come up out of the TA and even start that climb was excellent, and really excellent navigation, and y'all were in the maps with that, and other teams were not successful, and other successful, that turned around and went back into the TA just to wait for the sun to come up to get to the climb, right? So like y'all did a great job in terms of getting us on the right trail and getting us up there and getting up at least to the saddle. So yeah, it was a great job.
The next TA, which is another Rogaine, but that one you skip. So I'm assuming that on that next TA before that other Rogaine, this is after that canyon, right?
Oh well.
I think I'm putting all. See, the thing is, there were so many bike legs stitched together that I don't know exactly where we're at now.
So we had the long canyon, the big bike between two treks.
Yes.
The big high summit mountain trek, and then we had the bike, another big bike leg with the bikes on our back.
Okay, got it.
And then when we finished that bike leg, we got to TA4, which was the Rogaine trek.
Exactly. Yes.
So here's something else
talk
Here's
about what
something else
happened.
that, oops, I'm sorry, I didn't realize I was talking over you. Something else about the canyoneering is the original course had a canyon in leg 3 in that trek. That canyon was canceled. So then this next leg 4 canyon was where we were carrying our bikes down the canyon. And then there was yet one more canyon in the whole race, which was leg 9. The final leg was a canyon. So I don't know if that helps clarify anything, but yeah, we did get to TA4.
And because this race ended up being more about the people and the culture, that we should bring it up that towards the end of this crazy canyon trek where we're carrying our bikes up and over a mountain, like we basically didn't get to ride our bikes at all for like 8 or 10 hours. We finally got to the bottom, and these like little kids come out and they grab our bikes against our will and steal our bikes and start running it up to
Playfully.
the CP. Right? They against our will stole the bikes, and then we get to the CP, and then of course the locals are inviting us in for tea, and we could take a sleep, and they're bringing us bread, and it was another one of these opportunities that are like, okay, yeah, it's an adventure race, but we need to stop and we need to enjoy it. Also, it started to pour down rain, and it got very, very windy. It was like really, really easy to decide, let's just take a sleep and have some tea and really absorb the culture. And again, these, I don't know about these other racers, but these are the highlights of this race. Like, you know what I'm saying? I could carry my bike on my back for 10 hours. I'm not going to remember that 10 years from now, but I'm going to remember sitting and having tea at this CP. That's what imprinted on my brain.
I have to add one thing here. We have never been steered wrong by the locals. So when the local boys offered to push our bikes for us, I wouldn't say it was, against our will. I was, they would have stopped if in fact, one of them
If you could have
started to
kept up.
ride my bike and I said no. And he stopped. He didn't continue. Um, so, but, but they did not ask us where we were going. They knew where we were going. They were taking us where they knew we should go. And it was pretty nice, I have to say.
So I agree. I mean, I will remember carrying my bike for those 10 hours. I think that has imprinted on me. That canyon will have imprinted on me, and I think will have imprinted on my bike forever as well. But I would say like this is another bike like that turned into like, whoa, this was all in the same leg, because that night is that night that we were in the crazy wind, right? I mean, that was that night that we thought we were on the surface of the moon, and a little bit still getting our bearings, and had kind of saved a potentially catastrophic descent off the mountain off the wrong side. So like coming into TA4, that was still sort of a little bit of an epic evening, even now at the very tail end of this bike leg. Just again, like massive congrats on like sort of sorting out the navigation on that in what was, I mean, I don't know what the mile-an-hour winds were, but just I could watch Andrea, I could watch Michelle like with their bikes holding them, and then the bike just kind of like flying out beside them because of the wind, right? And it was like kind of all we could do to just stand there and take it, much less sort out where we were on the map.
I totally forgot that was the same leg.
It is, I think.
You're right.
It is the same leg at night. Yep, it sure is. We were up there going up and over another big climb up and over that pass into the TA, and it was around midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning when we did that.
Yeah.
And Sarah put it nicely, that we did a good job getting us out of there. But there was a couple times we had to hike our bikes back up the hill because we took the wrong turn. And oh, thank goodness we didn't go further than we did. It was hard enough turning around. And yeah, the gusts of wind, I have to say, they were stronger than New Zealand. And I thought New Zealand had the strongest wind I've ever experienced. But this was like, yeah, it picked up the whole bike. And
I think it was like 100K. And
Yeah, that's what I
Hour,
thought,
yeah.
60, 70 miles. I mean, it would not have surprised me if your bike had just been ripped out of your hand, right? Like, I mean, it looked that violent and that intense that I was just like, well, we might just lose our bikes.
Or if you like we went to sleep and you set your bike down and then you walk over to like get your sleep pad ready in a ditch and you're worried that your bike is going to get blown up and then it rides off the hill.
Yeah.
It was crazy wind.
We were really excited to get into that TA though, and that was a great TA.
That was the best TA on the
That
course.
was the best sleep of the whole course for sure.
Yeah.
So what was it? Like
A house.
ground?
No, it was
A house.
it was like a backpacking like house or big shelter building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With incredible views of the Rogaine that we did not go out on.
Yeah.
But it
And-
looked
With the snowy mountains and the crampons. You of course skip the whole Rogaine with the Atlas Mountains and the snow and the crampons, and basically so the TA was very comfortable. I would assume that you spend a considerable amount of time there in the TA getting a really good sleep now, right?
Well,
Yep.
this is a different TA than the one that was for the high mountain trekking. This
Okay.
was the lower Rogaine, and we went to sleep in the dark, and then when the sun came up, you could see the different levels of mountains, and you could see the whole range of where the Rogaine trek was taking place. It was gorgeous. I would love to go back there and do that leg of the race, just like as a tourist, just go visit and see that. There were some amazing accounts of that leg, and we just didn't have time to do it. It was the best decision for us. Obviously, we only had 40 minutes left on the clock when we got done, but yeah, at least we got to see it and see what we would have been doing as opposed to not seeing it at all. It was really beautiful.
So then now here, after you finally got your nice good sleep at this TA and you skip the entire Rogaine, then you're on the bike again. So it's bike, 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 bike. So you're in what should be leg 6 now. You're on your bike again. This is where you skip the point by going around the mountain that I was telling earlier. I mess up the different legs. I think this is where you skip that point. There was a point high in the mountain, and then you went around the mountain to go ahead to the TA where the water was. Correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. That is correct. Yep.
And we had a great lunch at a restaurant
Oh,
overlooking the water. Like
Yeah.
we saved
Nice.
2 hours by skipping that point. And we had tagines, which are these like ceramic plates with food in them. And I mean, we live like kings there and queens.
But this was also the bike leg where we got hailed on and went into Namila. What was her? I forget what her name was. Into her home, right? And that was probably the most epic cultural exchange for me, anyway. So we're on this bike leg and it's raining, and we were starting to feel like psychological torture from the weather, or I was anyway, because it was like, you took your raincoat on and the rain stopped, you get hot immediately, and you took your raincoat off and then it got cold immediately, and not just like a little bit, like you just have to tolerate it, but like significant, like 20-30 degree shifts like every 90 seconds. It felt like it's very frustrating, the whole coat on off thing. But finally it did open up and like hail on us, and we were standing in the front yard of this woman's home, basically under these trees, and she kept motioning for us to come in, and we were like, no guys, it's still a race, we have to keep going, we can't go in this house. And then it was like, all right, well, let's just go in the like front door of the house. And then I got really nosy and she wanted to show me. So I then went into the rest of the house. And then there we were drinking tea, sitting in her living room, after being shown her like beautiful loom and just the incredible weaving and work that she had been doing. But this was definitely one of those exchanges where there was not, we could almost not even communicate with hand signals. Like it was that much of a communication barrier. But that for me was like that was really special and really cool.
I am so glad that you forced the issue on that, because I think we had stopped just down the road underneath a awning of a mosque, and we'd sat there for 15 or 20 minutes. So I was kind of thinking, we can't stop again. We just got to keep going. Yeah, that was by far the best insight into what life is really like there. And seeing her loom and seeing the things that she was proud of. I know she showed you more, but you had said that she showed you her running water that seemed to be new.
Yeah, she was just really proud of it. Like the one tap that was in the kitchen, just one cold tap, and she yeah, she was very, very excited about it.
And that's when you brought out the hand.
It is when I brought out the hand for the first time.
If you are not watching on YouTube and you're just listening to the podcast, you should go watch it online because Sarah is showing us the hand.
The hand. So I carry around, like most people,
Like most people.
tiny rubber hands. Because you know what? They make us smile, right? They make us smile. And I had been carrying around this little toy in my backpack for like 4 days or something, or 3 days at this point. And I whipped it out, and everyone was very surprised, including our local friend. And I cannot wait to see the video footage of that. But we all talked about it's sort of like what we bring to the team, and it's like, for me, it really does I tried with the humor. So yes, the little hand, and then once the little hand came out, it really never went away.
Yeah, it's really good. And okay, so again, our podcast is for racers that are kind of new to this whole thing. I am so glad that we stopped and went into her house. Like like the racer in me, the competitive person wanted to keep going, and the rain had stopped, and we like, why don't we just keep going? And then we kept gravitating to, like, this lady kept insisting that we come into her house. And then we eventually, after many opportunities to say, we don't want to go, we don't want to go, we don't want to go. And then finally we go. And then we get in there and we're sitting down and we're having tea. And literally, this may have been the highlight of my race.
Mm-hmm.
Like, literally, like, we're 4 days into this shit and we're in Morocco. And this lady, like, these aliens come in with all of our packs and our headlamps and all this shit. And we come in and she's inviting us into her house and shows us her running water and shows us her cow and we're all muddy and she lets us sit in her living room. We got this on GoPro, by the way. So those of you who watch our YouTube channel, you're gonna see this in our video. It ended up being the highlight, right? Like you got the little handout. Like it's like literally this is the stuff that sticks out. Like the 8 hours of carrying your bike across the mountain doesn't count. The sitting down for 10 minutes with this lady with tea in her house. That's what really counts. And so adventure racing is a lot more about the race and a lot less about the race than it is about meeting the culture and being part of this society and doing something epic with friends.
Well, the beauty is that it's all in one. It's not one or the other.
Right.
You're racing and you're experiencing the culture. And if you weren't racing, you wouldn't have an opportunity to experience this culture. If you go as a tourist, you're not going to see that.
That's exactly what I was just thinking. I was like, we got to go in that woman's house because we carried our bikes down a canyon for 10 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
the thing about this
Sarah
is
pulls
that
out,
Sarah
pulls out a pack of gum and gives this woman a piece of gum. And Michelle also takes a piece of gum, and Michelle starts chewing it. And so the lady takes half of it and starts chewing half of it. It was hard to tell if she was enjoying it or if she thought she had to, or
I think she was super into it. It's like they have gum there, right? Like we're not like bringing, like light to the villages, right? Like it was a piece of gum, but it might have been packaged in a way she'd never seen before or didn't understand like maybe why I was offering it to her at the time that I offered it to her. But yeah, she definitely, took half a piece of it and wasn't really sure if she was enjoying it.
But I hope what came across, and probably did, is that we were thankful for her bringing us in there. We were trying to be friendly and, giving her something that, we happened to have, which wasn't much of anything to give her. So, yeah, it was a really unique experience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry, Tomas. carry on.
Just want to add that despite the course being the same for every team has a different experience. Every team has different on the battle, so to speak, stories, and every experience is different for each and every team, despite it being the same course. So it's really good to listen to these stories from the field, from the people who participated, and your stories are going to be slightly different than the other teams. Well, there's going to be some similarities, of course, but each team is racing their own race. Same cars, though. That's all. That's what I want to add.
Agreed, for sure. Yeah, but we did finally make our way to TA 5. Was that TA 5 or 6 or whatever it was?
TA6. TA6.
Second to last for us. That was supposed to be a paddle.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. Who wants to share that experience?
Yeah.
well, I think this is a good opportunity for us to sort of talk about the other teams in the race that we knew too, right?
Yes.
It became pretty cruxy. So we get into the TA where we're transitioning to paddle. I think we had thought we were going to go get maybe 3 paddle points was sort of the goal, and we were excited to do something besides ride our bikes and eat tagine. And we're getting ready. We had totally changed. We had completely transitioned. We were like ready to paddle, and our good friends from Team Bones were coming off the paddle. And this is the only other U.S. team in the race. Half of them are Canadian, but it was the only other U.S. flagged team in the race. And my longtime friend, Jen Sager, I walked over to her. I was like, hey, how was it? And they were pretty smoked and just had shared, I think they just went out and got 1 paddle point. And she basically was like, you don't have time. And we were like, shit, we don't have time. And sort of gave us pause. And I'm just really grateful that we took that extra beat to really consider the timing again, because what played out for the next, 24 hours would have looked very different had we gone and spent a few hours out on the paddle. And to the race organizers' credit, what I really appreciated is that like they weren't going to stop us, right? Like the volunteers and the race staff were just sort of like, yeah, go for it. The wind's going to come up tonight, but they weren't even trying to dissuade us necessarily. Like they really wanted us to do our own race. But I was really glad that we had the opportunity to sort of interact with the other American team and for them to kind of say, you might want to think about that again.
We were told by one of the volunteers. Oh, no, it was the referee. So at one of the TAs, we kind of asked about how long it's taking other teams. And he said, well, the race organization is telling people that the last leg was going to take 4 or 5 hours. So he said, then plan on 6 hours. And so since he said 6 hours, we planned on 8 hours. And then since we thought we wanted 8 hours for the final leg, we knew that if we left the paddle when we did, that would give us a fighting chance. And we already had our life jackets on. We had our paddles together. We were ready to go out in the boat when Sarah found out that Jen said, we don't have time. And that's a good source. Bones is a good team to be the judge of that for us, because we're thinking if they don't have time, we certainly don't have time. Like they must be right. And then it kind of jogged in our memories that, that Jose and Rob Howard had met us at one of the bike passes at the Overlook, and they were kind of saying, oh, and they drove by. Anyway, they were also saying, like, where are you going? Like, why are you over here? Because they didn't understand why we took a different route to that TA. And then, we said, oh, we're going to the paddle put in. And they're like, you don't have time. And it was a quick in passing thing that they said. And I didn't really interpret what they were saying. I didn't know if they knew what we were doing and all that. But then putting it together with what Jen said, and then us doing our own back mapping, thinking, oh, yeah, all these legs are taking us way longer than we think they're going to. They must be right. We got to scrap this. And we put it all away and off we rode on our bikes again.
Again.
We had a really dry
You made the cutoff have you got into your kayaks, which means that, you wouldn't be ranked at all.
Exactly. Like if you were over time, the penalty was disqualification. Most every other race I've ever been in, you're dinged points relative to how late you are. but you're not disqualified. This race, you were disqualified if you're 1 minute late. And there were teams that were 1 minute late, or I don't know how late they were, but they were over time. And they definitely were, they were at the bottom. We beat them because we made it.
And since we knew basically our score had stopped at 21, and other than getting CPs like amongst other 21s, we didn't need to get more CPs. We just needed to make sure we got to the finish on time. That was the main point of this race. This race was an experience race for us. It was not a podium race. So I think we made the right decision. We gave up the paddle.
Well, and then I will say that like that bike leg was awesome. Right? Like that was the bike leg where we were just in those farmlands and like up high, and we did keep seeing some different teams, and we stopped and opened my high-low pack that I had. I mean, and that was just like I think felt like we were in the home stretch, and it just felt really good to be, it was fine to be back on the bike. And it was just such a beautiful ride.
Yeah.
You need to say more about the high-low pack.
Oh, yeah.
What is that?
The high-low pack. So the high-low pack comes from sort of outbound tradition, which is when we work with crews in the field in the wilderness. Often what we'll do is we'll send out with the crew when they start, they'll get a package, like maybe like this big, that's typically completely opaque and they have no idea what's inside it. It's just called a high-low pack. And you either open it when you're having a really high moment and you want to celebrate, or you open it when you're having a really low moment and you need a pick-me-up. And so I had that. My neighbors and good friends here, and one of my other teammates here had sort of given that to me, and so I've been carrying it in the top of my pack. It's similar to the writing, having someone write a letter to you. It's like another sort of thing to carry with you. And so I got out the tiny hand, and the tiny hand opened the high-low pack, and I just had some great notes and just some little pieces of nutrition in there. But it was that was just where we stopped, and we're under that tree and sort of like on top of that pasture land. That was just so gorgeous and lovely.
Yeah, it was.
That's pretty cool. With regards to the time and everything else, I'm going to add again how each race is different, each rules are different, and how in this particular race, you were saying you miss the deadline, you're DQ. The cutoff at the end, you're DQ. Whereas, for example, some other, like you said, Andrea, some other races, they start taking points off or checkpoints off or whatever. Or, Chip, you mentioned this sometimes Stefan races in Africa is like, well, there's really no cutoff, as in like, well, don't miss the bus back. Don't miss the right bus. Don't miss the bus right back. It's like you're cut off. So each race director kind of modifies the rules according to the race itself. So it's something interesting to see how some rules vary per race. That's all.
Yeah, so we finally got to that last TA, and I think Michelle needs to take over. We haven't heard much from her during the podcast, and this final leg, the whole race was relentless. But why don't you describe what happened at the final leg, Michelle? Oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute. Michelle, you're on mute.
Yeah, we came in off the bikes to TA8, I think, whatever it was. Maybe 3:00 in the morning. Right at this bridge, small TA, and we had the last trekking leg, which was 9K.
Only 9K.
That's 9K.
You might as well be at the finish, right?
Yeah. And ironically, we ended up basically canyoneering for 7 hours, in and out of pools and climbing and bouldering. And the leg sounds like it was very similar to one of the legs at the Eco Challenge in Fiji, actually. Talked to a couple people that said sounded very similar, with wetsuits, very cold. But we decided to get some sleep. That was the last time we saw the bikes. And the start of the leg had a rappel off of a bridge. And there was some confusion, I think. We got some sleep, we woke up, and then I think there was some confusion on actually how the leg was laid out. And do we want wetsuits on? Do we not want wetsuits on? We decided to put our wetsuits on.
God.
which was definitely the right move.
Ugh.
We put all our climbing gear on. So we just are weighted down with all of this clothing and gear. And off we go. Little 9K to the finish line. Little did we know. I think we started it at 6 a.m. right as the sun was coming up. So we had 8 hours to get to the finish line. We had to rappel off of a bridge to get down into the canyon. And then at that point, we started just this pretty epic crawl through this canyon for hours in the heat as the day warmed up, swimming and scrambling and swimming again. The volunteers at the TA were saying that, oh, you're only going to go up to water up to your knees or up to your waist, which we ended up, I mean, literally, water up to the neck. We must have been in what, 15 or 20 pools
Yeah.
that we ended up swimming through in that leg. We were full out swimming just to get to the other side to hit the shore. In retrospect, it was actually really fun.
Yeah.
At the time, I don't think I particularly enjoyed it. I was just exhausted at that point. We were all tired. But it was definitely really beautiful in there. And looking back on it, very, very cool leg. I just wish we had known what was coming. If we had known, we didn't get any notice that we would be swimming. They didn't really tell us how technical it would be. The information that we got was really, oh, you're just going to be down this creek, and then you're going to hit a waterfall and you're going to have another rappel. And that was kind of all the information we got. It ended up being very, very different than that. So yeah. And then we took out, finally got out, 6 hours later. We had another rope section. We did a via ferrata, a really short via ferrata or Tripolian traverse across a big creek. And then we started to climb up to the finish line. And I was overheating. I thought my wetsuit was going to suffocate me at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, it was awful. Yeah, I mean, at that point we were in the home stretch, and made our way up to the finish line, which was pretty spectacular. The finish line, Ozud Falls, the highest waterfalls in North Africa. It was pretty spectacular finish line area. Pretty overwhelming.
Yeah, Sarah's got to describe it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is I keep telling people, and everybody asks how it was, and I'm like, when you have those travel experiences where you're like, no one is ever going to understand this. Like, I am never going to be able to describe no one's ever going to know what this was like unless you're there. But for me, it was like, okay, it's the Emirates, it's Nepal, it's the throngs and chaos of like India and all the people. And it was just like, suddenly we had gone from being our tight little unit in these pools to then being with like what felt like hundreds of people. And I think it was hundreds of people, and the race staff like surrounded us like at the bridge, which was the finish, and like kind of escorted us over the finish line. And it was chaotic. And as we crossed the finish, they're like, this is a surprise 10th stage, as we had to climb 650 steps to get out of the canyon that we were in to kind of get up to where we could actually like, be at the hotels and be at our stuff. But it was just like an assault on all the senses possible, right? Like there's loud music and loud voices and people everywhere. And, the euphoria of sort of finishing a race. But it was, I mean, that was, I would say, in like one of my top 5 life spectacular experiences was just that finish and the energy and the uniqueness and the once in a lifetime, never to be repeated experience of finishing that race.
That feeling of like, it's like a knowing you earned it, and then like having the release of you're done, is like every emotion at the same time. And oh, it was so busy. They wanted to give us tea and juice, but there was no table for us to sit at. And we're like, oh, we've been on our feet. We're so ready to done. And so, yeah, we carried on up the stairs and
ice cream all along the way.
That's right, ice cream on the way. It was hard to believe it was over, but it was a hard race. I mean, every leg was really demanding. And, as always, it's just amazing to think that there were teams that completed the entire course and finished, more than a day ahead of us. And um, it's pretty neat to know that humans can do that. And it's also pretty neat to know that I can do what we did. Like we did some amazing stuff. In that canyon, Michelle, I just remember like seeing your face one time. I was like, oh my gosh, she is miserable. And then I said something about it. And then the next thing she said was, no, I'm really having fun. I'm like, that is not
no,
a fun
really.
face you're making. She's like, no, really, this is fun. And you do have that mix of emotions in adventure racing where you're in this spectacular location with these people you've come to love that you're having a great time with. And it's a once in a lifetime thing. So you're having fun, but you're also having a terrible time at the same time. That was what that canyon was like, I think. It's just
Tears did a little clip on you coming out of one of those pools, and now it makes more sense what you're saying, Michelle, because the clip that it was shown in the disability page was Sarah talking about the experience, Chip coming out of the pool. By pool I mean the pools in the canyon. And now it makes sense because I see Michelle. I remember seeing Michelle right there sitting on a rock, and yes, her face looked a little bit like the heat and everything. So now I remember that image, and it does make sense more. Now it makes more. Now that you describe it, it makes more sense.
Yeah.
No, it was a furnace. I thought I was gonna pass out.
Yeah.
It is true. We were wearing wetsuits that as they dry, they get tighter on you, and it was just like we knew we had to get to the. I mean, and this was the thing is, it all started and we're like, this is crazy. This leg is not at all what we thought it was. And then ultimately we're like, oh my gosh, we got to look at the clock, right? I mean, we started sweating it that we were going to have enough time even. So we weren't going to be stopping to take our wetsuits off at that point. It was just like, hopefully they don't kill us.
Yeah, I think I was the only one looking at the map during that whole canyon. I mean, I know Chip had his somewhere and we looked at the one I had with me together. But at some point, I remember saying, okay, you guys, we need to be prepared for not making it. Like just mentally prepare yourself for going overtime because this is taking us so long. And I wasn't exactly sure where we were on the maps. And, luckily we did have time, but there was a time where I was like, we can't go faster, but we also can't make the finish line come to us. So, we might not make it.
Yeah.
So, what a relief that we did.
Yeah, it's really good that we made it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say that after the race, Chip sent me a message almost immediately saying that we're done with the race or whatever, and we arrived with 40 to spare. And when he said 40 to spare, I thought he meant 40 seconds, not 40 minutes.
Yeah, right.
40, that
no, it's 40
so
minutes.
stressful.
Andrea was with us, so she was like making sure we had lots of extra time. And I'm glad she did because the canyon was way harder than we expected. It took a lot longer than we expected. So we needed that buffer to end the race so that again, the rankings aren't what's important to us, but in the end of the day, it's like we wanted to run the race that we wanted, and I believe that we achieved that. And then we want to do the best that we could have done from a ranking standpoint. So yeah, I'm very, very proud of the team on how we threaded that needle.
Yeah.
Agree.
Interesting stories or funny things that we may have missed on this whole race? No.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think we covered
a little
it all.
hand there.
Got the hand.
Well, Chip.
Yeah, I guess when you watch the video, all of you guys should watch the videos that come out. There's going to be the cultural experience of us on the leg one, the trek, stopping by and getting watermelon with the locals. And that I think that's a really important interaction that we had. And then as we progress through the course, we have some video of us stopping in the lady's house when it was hailing and the mosque and all of that. And so pay a lot of attention to that because I think that was a really important part of the course. And what the reason I'm saying this is that when people do adventure racing, it's not just about the race, it's about the people, it's about the culture, it's about the country that you're in, and these experiences that leave this imprint on your brain. So when you watch our videos, like stay attuned to these pieces of the video of us interacting with the culture of the people. And these are these experiences that really made our race. And hopefully when you do this, if you experience another culture or you go on a race or you go to Morocco or whatever, this will be the imprint that you have as well. When you
I think I have to interrupt you because you're minimizing the badassery that occurred on our team. We really did some amazing hard things that will definitely stay with me as well. Like I said before, like adventure racing is so great that you get all of these experiences in one. And yeah, I'm just really proud of all of our team and how we managed all the physicality, the technicality, and managed to, have these cultural experiences as well. It's the mix of it all that makes it really, really special. So that was my final word. Anybody else have some final words?
No, I appreciate you saying that, Andrea, though, too, because I think what Chip's just trying to highlight is the amazing cultural experience that we allowed ourselves to have while also doing really hard technical, really physical stuff, right? And encouraging people to continue to have those experiences, but not leave out the fact that we still covered, like 50,000 feet of elevation gain and over 300 miles and picked our bikes up probably in excess of 200 times up over our heads. And did a lot of things we didn't expect to do. I think my final words, and I think this is a lot about racing for me too, is I'll say it, that like you have family, you have friends, and you have teammates, right? And I always think that like people who you go on expedition with and have experiences like we all just had together, it's like you're in your own separate category, right? Like sure, we're all friends, right? But we're teammates because we've had this experience that we'll never have with anybody else ever again. And we may have the experience with each other somewhere else, some other way, and some other time, but the one we just had, won't be repeated. And I'm just really grateful for the time that we all got to share with each other, and just really proud and happy to call y'all teammates.
Me too.
Yeah, ditto that.
Great. You have any last words, Michelle?
Oh, great. No, you guys said it all. I mean, really, yeah, you just kind of I like these races. They just put you in a different space, They take you away from everyday life and just to get to see things and experience things that you can't pay a tour guide to take you through, the highs and the lows and the emotions. And I think they make you a better person at the end of the day. You come back to life, the real world, and everything seems pretty easy, nothing really hard, much to stress over. So, yeah, I appreciate the effort, and it was an amazing experience.
Well, thank you guys for racing with us.
Yes.
Thank you for following us, Tomas. Anyone out there listening, thank you for your support and for listening to us ramble on. If you ever have any questions or anything, you can reach out to us. And I guess that's
Absolutely. And our guide, Abdullah, like made our experience, like not just our team, but before and after our team, made sure everything was fine. So we actually have an entire podcast with just Abdullah. Please listen to him. And if you ever want to go to Morocco, consider reaching out to him and helping him. Like, he can actually make your experience really, really amazing. So either way, like there's gonna be 2 podcasts about Morocco. Definitely check out the Abdullah podcast if you're interested in going there yourself.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Cheers, y'all.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please take a moment to leave a rating and a comment. To find additional content, including the video versions of these discussions, you can search for thisABILITY Racing on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
We hope this podcast inspired you to focus on your abilities and plan your next adventure.
See you on the trail.